Our next speaker is Steve Irving, who spent 30 years with the London Ambulance Service, ending as its executive officer, before becoming the chief executive, or the executive officer of the Association of Ambulance Chief Executives in the UK. He's a paramedic, and he is an impressive leader who appreciates the complexities of working, collaborating with high-level stakeholders. Indeed, he is a main organizer of the annual leadership forum that is run by the Association of Ambulance Chief Executives, and in fact I think the most recent episode, a chapter of that in February this year, you had David Waters over there presenting as well. And I've seen reference on the web the fact that this issue of collaboration is collaboration in the field, and the field, as we heard from Mark this morning, is a field that has some great complexities to it, some real challenges. And while Mark was focusing on such episodes as the marauding terror, Steve has spoken about the issue of harassment of staff across the services, and also the problems of the growing economic cost, but the growing service delivery cost of issues like binge drinking and the impact that that has on emergency services. Would you please welcome Steve Irving?
First off, thanks Chris for that excellent clinical talk. It's always refreshing to hear clinical subjects at these conferences, and New Zealand seems to have been energised, certainly the way you were delivering, so can't think why that might be. The presentation from Mark Whitbread this morning, I owe him a vote of thanks, because he's really acted as my warm-up guy. The summary for what I was asked to do was about, collaboration, integration and partnerships, and in the true spirit of the word of collaboration, I didn't mention a word to Mark Whitbread that was what I've been asked to do, so we find that there may be some similarities with some of the ground we might cover. However, I will bring a bit of a political slant to some of it perhaps, and try and keep it fresh and a different take on it for you. But so quickly, a little bit about who we are, who we represent, and being fairly topical today is not only the emergency services and health services, but a little bit about the public services, because as we're saying, shifting care from one system to another without adequate resourcing really can present problems. So the Association of Ambulance Chief Executives, very similar role to the CAA. And if you read that, that really sounds a little bit like collaboration, integration and partnerships, doesn't it? We have 10 member services across England, 5 associate services in what we call the devolved administrations, so Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and we also represent the island services around our coasts. So we broadly cover, as an association, the UK. We're a lot smaller landmass than Australia, but 10 member services, population of 60 million-ish. Some of our challenges are the same, although of course you would have to say we're a lot more dense than you are. Or sorry, our population is much more dense than yours. 10 ambulance services in England, 15 in total. Compare those numbers. Oh, I did meant to say that anybody who spots spelling mistakes, just to make sure you keep awake. 42 police services across England, 45 if you include the devolves, and we have 3 special police constabularies: British Transport Police, the Civil and Nuclear Constabulary and the Ministry of Defence Police. Fire and rescue services go even more, 49 services, and they cover the islands as well on top of that. That's 49 chief fire officers, that's 49 deputy chief fire officers, that's 49 finance directors, that's an awful lot of infrastructure. And of course, the buzzword across the UK, and with yourselves I'm sure, is about efficiencies. It's about back office functions. It's about how can we work smarter. The ambulance service has a few suggestions for our colleagues and some of the other blue light services. So health and social care budgets, we've spoken a little bit about these today, and I'll get his title right, the Secretary of State, I believe, was it? Sorry, this Secretary of Australian Department of Health, Martin Bowles, this morning, mentioned the cost pressures. And facilitating of care across boundaries is a real stumbling block in the UK. And there's just a brief illustration of why. We have ambulances queuing outside emergency departments to offload patients into an already crowded system, and the system remains very, very chock-a-block and choked because the difficulty of discharging patients after treatment for acute needs in a hospital, the secondary care outside of hospital for patients recovering, or the services for facilitating their independent living back home have been curtailed enormously. Cost pressures on council care has, just been disproportionate, and some would say, swinging. So, although there's difficulties with funding within the NHS and the health service in general, that's relatively protected compared to council care. So the difficulties of getting patients discharged is really acute. So, collaboration. We're fairly unique in the UK that for the last few months it's now a statutory obligation. And it sounds sensible, but who should we be collaborating with? Co-responder collaboration. If you're the patient, would you really mind if it was a fireman that pressed the button on the defibrillator? Would you mind if it was a police officer? Or even the manager of Tesco's? It's really not going to matter, is it? As long as you're getting appropriate treatment in the right time frame. So co-responder collaboration makes perfect sense. The duty to collaborate we've had for the last couple of months was enshrined in the Police and Crime Act, and I believe we're probably unique in that respect, that it's been written into legislation. We were aware that legislation was coming, and it was discussed with us. And it was obviously being driven by services other than health. We heard a minister for another blue light service speaking, and he was saying that he was on his way back to his constituency one Friday afternoon on the motorway when he was aware on the other carriageway of an enormous accident, and it had attracted emergency services from all directions. And there was fire engines from this direction and ambulances from here and police cars from there. Wouldn't it be more sensible to have them all together, he suggested. And he seemed to make it his business to go about making sure that collaboration and integration was higher up the consideration than it had been. So you can see the statement there. The important bit, the new statutory duty to collaborate will require each emergency service to enter into collaboration agreements where it would be of the interest of their efficiency or effectiveness. That was considerably watered down to what was originally proposed. We think in health that we probably got away quite lightly with that obligation, which we are obviously happy to meet and support because it makes sense. Our reply at the time of the issue of the thing was an endorsement, but it was a qualified endorsement where it's about delivering benefits to patients. This is a unique chap. Well, I think he's unique. I don't know him personally, and I don't know the full story. I understand he qualified as a paramedic. He then became a firefighter, and in the rural area he works, there are community police support officers. So he decided, I want a third hat, and he took on a role as a community police support officer. So in theory, he can actually undertake all three roles. Very good. That's excellent. I don't think he gets 3 salaries, but I'd be interested to find out whether he did. But this chap is now a community officer, isn't he? He's a safety officer for the whole community. And that's quite a responsibility, and one assumes he's going to need backup for almost everything. As opposed to doing one job and being able to deliver on it, the 3 jobs are going to be really quite difficult to do, other than the normal routine health and safety inspections and some first aid advice and some parking legislation perhaps. So the Minister's keen that collaboration is seen as the key, and he goes on to say in this statement down here that police, fire and ambulance frequently work closely together. Frequently? That's probably open to discussion. Less than 10% of our ambulance work is attended with police and fire colleagues. Now, those are the high-profile RTCs that people see. There are any number of circumstances when we do it, but as a percentage of our workload, it's very, very small. 90% of our workload is related to health, and it requires a health response. These are the sort of collaboration that we perhaps could be looking at in more detail, and I know some of you are doing the same already. The lady's sign there says, "I'm a midwife and I work as a technical midwife advisor." London Ambulance Service employs 2/3 of a week, I think it is, a midwife consultant to transform the maternity care delivered by ambulance crews, and it's a huge support, and it's a very effective bit of risk management. It's well worth the investment. Mental health. Some ambulance trusts are employing their own mental health advisors, usually nurses, and they will work often in the control room providing support to call takers and direct to patients on mental health issues. Occupational therapists. Ambulance services are teaming up with occupational therapists to respond to falls cases, as we've heard before in New Zealand. Low acuity patients, but there's a great cost saving to be made with the right sort of response early on. So collaborating with areas of the health service can really pay dividends, and it's not really thinking out of the box because it's nothing new. We all dabble in it perhaps, but I think some concerted effort and partnerships to be created and collaboration with other members of the health service can really pay dividends. Some of the skill mix we can change around. Rather than a paramedic and an ambulance crew assistant or ambulance technician, a mental health and a paramedic in the West Midlands, this is based out, and a police officer responding in one vehicle. I think they curtail the hours to when it's going to be busiest, Friday, Saturday nights probably. But the common call will be somebody on a bridge, they look like they're going to be jumping off. Somebody beside a railway contemplating suicide. These are really acute cases where the right intervention at the right time can be really life-saving. So again, collaboration on a different scale. Calls from the police. The police are actually one of our largest users at the London Ambulance Service. An enormous number, and Mark mentioned this morning the Joint Response Unit. These are some of the figures from the Joint Response Unit, which by coincidence he didn't use, so I'm glad I've got them here. Really, really effective. 21,000 activations, 16,000 incidents attended, and 13,000 incidents where they were the only one vehicle on scene, and 79, or nearly 80% of the Joint Response Unit attendances did not require an ambulance. So that's a massive saving to the organisation, and a better service to the patients, or if they weren't patients, the people that were coming to the police attention. So the Joint Response Unit is very, very effective, and they're being rolled out, as Mark said, across London. Ambulance demand is very similar to the pressures that you see across Australasia, for the very same reasons, primarily driven by the ageing population. Chronic illnesses, comorbidities, minor conditions. This is quite an interesting fact I found, that more than half of adults over 65 or older have 3 or more chronic ongoing medical conditions. Heart disease, diabetes, we all know they're on the rise, cancer and arthritis. And of course, the health services that we all provide can do more about these instances. We keep people alive longer, it's compounding the issue in some respects. But we need to understand how we can meet the demand of these people satisfactorily, and as a society, how we're going to fund it. Because it's a problem for all of us wherever we're working. But going back to the original theme, a small proportion of our work requires the 3 blue light services who we're duty bound to be collaborating with. This is a bit of a utopian setup for a UK anyway. We didn't used to talk to each other, let alone share the same garage and mess room. Is this the spirit of collaboration? Yes, it is. It's sharing back office costs. Is it making a massive difference to the community? Possibly not. It's a facility. If it serves the back office costs and it releases some money for patient care, it's a good thing. It also actually looks really good to the public, that they know they're in good hands and everybody is all in one place. This is the popular perception of an emergency response. It's seen on the television quite often. It's the 3 services working together, but these are high-profile events. Without getting boring and going over the same things, high-profile events do tragically happen. And the three services come together and work extremely well. And just to labour a point, we have the doctrine from the Joint Emergency Services Interoperability Programme, which is now the framework, and it's tried, tested, it's almost, I would say, embedded now as a cultural thing, and it works across three services. And that's the first time there's been that commonality across the emergency services. It's scalable, and that generally means scalable downwards. So what was designed for big incidents, such as massive fires or terrorist incidents, can actually be downscaled to an entrapment in a vehicle, or any other instance where it might be a fall with a difficult extrication, where the three services are coming together. Funny I got this one in as well, isn't it? Sometimes we have to adapt plans because the unexpected happens. Nobody was expecting the Special Air Service to appearing, landing on London Bridge. What Mark probably was going to mention, that we have air ambulances that operate in London and have done for many years, but it doesn't fly at night. And it certainly doesn't fly at night without lights and creep up on people. So that was a bit of a surprise. So just a quick refresh back to where we began, the duty to collaborate. Statutory duty to collaborate will require each emergency services, so just hold that thought, emergency services, and might substitute that in a minute, to enter into agreements where it would be in the interest of their efficiency and effectiveness. Where else could that be applied, do you think? Is there any chance that we could get people to actually agree to be efficient and effective and agree with each other and move things forward? What a great place to start would be with the politicians, I suspect. And to reiterate that the NHS ambulance response across the UK would be, we fully support the collaboration. There's savings to be made, there's efficiency to be made, but most importantly, if they're sensible, workable, and truly deliver benefits for patients and the public, we're wholeheartedly behind them, but not as just a political agenda to prolong their political careers. So that's mine, done, so thank you.